This week's story is entitled Dr. Bell is Alive and Well. See if you can figure out the mystery. Here we go. Everybody has a favorite teacher. Artie Doyle had a favorite teacher. Artie Doyle was a medical student, first-year med student. He had a favorite teacher, a professor named Bell. Dr. Bell must have been a fascinating instructor because Artie remembered him all his life. In fact, that's how we know about Dr. Bell, from Artie. The thing that made Dr. Joseph Bell so interesting was the way he taught. It was so special that he kept students on the edge of their seats. Joseph Bell had started at the bottom of the hospital as a hospital attendant and wound up head of the Edinburgh University Medical School. If you knew Dr. Bell, you'd say he made it because he knew how to think. That's what he always was telling his students. You've got to learn how to think, or all you know won't get you anywhere. Bell used to demonstrate this to his students. He had an outpatient facility where he interviewed patients, and sometimes he would invite the class to join him there. He'd have them stand around and watch while these new patients came in to see the doctor. The stories make Bell sound a lot like Dr. Gillespie, squinting over his glasses and intimidating his patients with a childishly wicked expression. Then he'd say something like, "Oh, you must either be a cork cutter or a slater." The startled patient would acknowledge that, well, in fact, he was a slater. Dr. Bell would then turn to his class and wink. He had observed a slight callus on one side of the forefinger and a little thickening on the outside of the thumb. For observant Bell, that was enough to identify the trade of his patient, one who works with slate. Another time, Dr. Bell turned to his class immediately before interviewing a patient. "This man's a cobbler," he told them. And he was right. Bell had caught a glimpse of the man's trousers. They were worn on the inside of the knee, right where a cobbler's lapstone sits. Now, you say this doesn't sound much like medicine, but what Dr. Bell was trying to impress upon his students, what he was trying to cultivate in them, was the power of observation. You must notice everything, he told them. A good doctor has to notice everything. Still another time, Dr. Bell told a brand new patient that he, the patient, was not long discharged from the Army. Bell had no readily obvious way of knowing this. The man was wearing street clothes, but Dr. Bell went on to say that the patient had been a non-com officer in a Highland regiment and that he had been stationed at Barbados. Dr. Bell was right on all counts. It was very simple, he explained to his students. The man was respectful but did not remove his hat. They do not in the Army. But he would have learned civilian ways had he been long discharged. He had an air of authority, so obviously Scottish. As to Barbados, his complaint was elephantitis, which is West Indian and not British. And to Dr. Bell's students, something else was obvious. That for Dr. Bell, medicine was sort of, well, detective work. It's not a matter of coincidence that complicated mystery stories also fascinated him. So it was the way he thought and the way he taught that kept his students spellbound. I'm thinking, however, about Artie Doyle, the first-year med student who sat enraptured in the back of Bell's class. Artie would go on to become a doctor, yet you know him for a more famous talent. Artie also became a writer, and though the medicine he learned from Dr. Bell was significant, his professor's power of inductive reasoning was even more so. Artie immortalized it, and him, in a character the world can never forget, because Artie Doyle one day became Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the author. And because one classmate remembered him so well, Dr. Bell is even yet alive and well, 100 years later and living in literary history forever after as the greatest ever criminal diagnostician. It was Dr. Bell who was the author's model for the master sleuth of all time, Sherlock Holmes. And that's the rest of the story. Have a good weekend, everybody.